Good evening, or I should say good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Kino with STEMwithKino.com, and I am going to kind of intermingle a ground school that I'm doing with a new subscriber of mine. Um, and we'll just say her name is Maria, and she is going to be starting flight training very shortly in an aircraft called the Cessna 152. So basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of tailor some videos towards her needs, kind of help her out and kind of speed up the process or shorten the learning curve of her flight training. So without further ado, I'm just going to pause for a second so I can change some things up. Okay, so I've made the adjustments that I need to make, and I am actually positioning our simulation at the particular airport that Maria will be using or operating from. So first off, we'll see if we can zoom in a little bit. All right, French Valley is the name of the airport, and I'm actually looking at a sectional chart here, and it is the Los Angeles sectional. Um, F70, or we would say Foxtrot 70, is the airport. Um, they have the airport weather observation service, and that frequency is on 119.025. Um, the field elevation is 1350. Uh, Part-time lighting is at this airport, and I just want to, let's see if we can right click this here. We can't get a, wow, we can't get a, I guess they don't have all right, let's see. All right. So okay, we'll get some more information here. And skyvector.com, I've already spoken to her about this website, skyvector.com, and she can see all the information about the airport coordinates, field elevation, 1,349 feet above sea level. I believe the longest runway is 6,000 feet, and it is 6,000 feet. So that is a lot of runway to work with, and that's really good. Let's come on back. And all right, 6,000 feet is the longest runway, and we have the common traffic advisory frequency on 122.8. And if we're going to be executing a landing on runway 36, it is going to be a right-hand traffic pattern. That's what RP means. Okay, I've taken the liberty of looking at some things here. So we have ourselves positioned on runway 36, which means we are going to be pointed to the north. And this is the particular aircraft that Maria is going to be operating. This is the Cessna 152. Nice little airplane. Very, very simple to fly. Very easy to fly. Let's come on into the virtual cockpit. If we look here, we have some things here, like our basic 6 flight instruments. We have a clock there. We have a VOR receiver. And we have a automatic direction finding equipment, simple communications and navigation radios, and we tune them like we would tune our radios. Here is the radio for the automatic direction finder, transponder, tachometer. So it's very, very simple. I can take this out and remove, hold on, okay, I can remove the control wheel just so we can see instruments just for simulation purposes. So we have a oil and temperature, oil pressure, oil temperature and oil pressure gauge. We have our fuel gauges here for the left and right engines. Um, we have the master switch. We'll talk about that in a moment. And we have our trim wheel. Let's see what we have. We have our throttle mixture, flaps. We have our circuit breakers on the bottom. We have cabin air, cabin heat. We have our rudder pedals there on the bottom. And let's come on down. All right, we have, all right, I'm looking for our fuel selector switch. All right, and we'll find that in a second. We have our vacuum gauge. And we'll talk about some of these instruments down the road as we go along, but today is just kind of like a familiarization flight. Okay. Now, we would be operating with a checklist. Okay, so this aircraft is, let me just take a look. Let's look at the, okay, let's turn the master switch off. And let's see which way the, okay. So I just wanted to kind of familiarize myself simulator-wise with this particular aircraft. Okay, so let's see if there's any other things here we need to be aware of. Radio stack there, engine controls there. Fix that, and we'll zoom in a little bit. All right, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So for Maria's purposes, we'll just go into the basic 6 flight instruments, and let's come on down, and we will focus on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 instruments here. What we have here is our airspeed indicator. This tells us how fast we are flying through the air, kind of like a speedometer, if you would. Okay, and you see airspeed. It is calibrated in knots, not miles per hour. There is a little miles per hour gauge. As this needle swings, this will slide, and you can kind of see how fast you're flying in miles per hour. But we operate in knots. This is our attitude indicator. The attitude indicator tells us this represents your aircraft. And I know this looks like it's in a left turn, and this is only because the engine is not on. After we fire up the engine, the gyroscope in here will stabilize, and this will level out with the airplane. Altimeter, we stated that we were about 1,300 and some change above sea level, and this is the thousands needle, and this is the hundreds of feet needle. So 1,300, 20, 40, 60, I think it was 1360, somewhere around there. The turn coordinator we won't go into too much right here, but we will talk about. This is powered electrically. Our heading indicator, we are pointed to the north. This represents our miniature aircraft, and we could either be, if this card turns, so we could either be pointed north, south, east, or west. And then we have our vertical speed indicator, which tells us how fast we're climbing in hundreds of feet per minute, and that's what that means. So those are your basic 6 flight instruments, and you are going to rely on that, on these instruments a lot during your throughout your training, because they basically tell the pilot or you what the aircraft is doing. Let's see if we have a Hobbs meter. See, it looks like a Hobbs meter there. Okay. Now, no. All right. That's not a Hobbs meter. Okay. Some of these are pretty cool. They actually have a Hobbs meter in them, which is pretty neat. Let me see if I can get another. Yeah, right. See, this would be your instructor's position here. Instructors typically in light aircraft sit on the right-hand side. So this is what your instructor would be looking at. There's an RPM gauge, which tells you how fast your propeller is rotating in revolutions per minute, RPMs, and we have an ammeter here that tells us whether our battery's charging, discharging, and things of that nature. And if we get a zoom in here, come on, slide, moving a little slow, but if we get a high voltage condition, this light will go off to alert us that abnormally something is going wrong electronically. All right. So basically, what will happen the first time that you fly with your instructor? Let's see if we can get rid of that one as well. Okay. And these are just circuit breakers. All right. Carbeat. Is this like a push button type deal? Okay, yeah, carbeat. All right, good. All right, let's come on back to your side. All right, and let's zoom out. So basically what your instructor is going to do is read through a checklist. He or she will, let's see if I can't get this checklist up. Okay, so yeah, so this is the Cessna 152 checklist. Um, Now, the particular aircraft has its own checklist, but we'll go through V-speeds down the road, limitations and things of that nature, emergency procedures. We're going to just scroll down to normal procedures. So, Maria, I will send you a copy of this, but you have to keep in mind that this is just a reference. This may not be the particular, it will not be the POH that is actually sitting inside the airplane, but this is just a reference to kind of go by. And a lot of Cessna 152s are very similar, so you know, this should not be too far off target, and if it is, we'll talk about it. You'll go through a pre-flight inspection. Your instructor will go through a pre-flight inspection where it basically starts inside the cockpit, and then you'll go around the tail of the aircraft, and and then come around the front to the propeller. You'll take fuel samples, check the propeller, alternator, carburetor air inlet, and things of that nature. And you'll come around, you'll check the lights and stuff like that, and linkages and things. All right, so this goes into detail. Um, the steps that are needed that we need to check during a pre-flight inspection, and then we will get to the end, and this is where we'll start out for this video. Okay, so your pre-flight inspection will be complete at this point. And actually, I think I'm going to send you this. I'll just send you this. Yeah, I'll send you this. So at this point, your pre-flight inspection is going to be complete. And you're going to sit down in the aircraft, and you're going to put your seatbelt and your shoulder harnesses, and you're going to adjust and lock them. Your fuel shutoff valve will be in the on position. All right, so let's get back in the airplane. All right. So you're going to make sure that your radios and electrical equipment is off. So basically, your radios and electrical equipment, you're going to just basically go from left to right. Now, if your master switch is off, everything's going to be off. Your alternator and your battery will be in the off position, but you will come down to the light switches here. They could be in the on. Okay, and these rocker switches, only problem because I'm all right. Okay, so this is the on position. The up position for these switches is on, but you want to make sure that these are off. Okay. You come up to your communication radios. All right, and you go from top to bottom. All right, and you'll make sure that this is in the off position. And it is. Your ADF, your automatic directional finder, is in the off position. And you'll make sure that your transponder is in the off position. So at this point, all electrical equipment is off. Let's come back to the checklist. So that's checks. Brakes, test, and set. You will just kind of, what you will do with that portion of the checklist, or that part of the checklist, all right, what you will do is you will go to your parking brake. I should have put this in virtual reality mode. All right. Okay, your parking brake, you just simply pull out and you rotate downward. All right. So for our purposes, the parking brake is set. All right. Brakes test and set. Circuit breakers check in. With your circuit breakers check in, all right, on the instructor side, which is the right seat, you just kind of reach over. You're going to take your thumb and just rub it across. These are your circuit breakers. You're going to take your thumb and just gently rub it across. If they pop out, you'll see orange. All right, so you'll see white and then you'll see orange exposed if it is a bad circuit breaker. And basically at that point, that will indicate you got a bad circuit breaker. You push it in, but normally you can push it in and it'll be fine. If not, or if you keep having problems with it, you have to look at which circuit breaker, what is it associated with. Like say for instance, your beacon light, you definitely need that. If it was, I don't know, some Cessna 152s have landing and taxi lights. So maybe if it was a taxi light and your landing light functioned well, um, instrument lights, you would not need them during the daytime. And most of your initial training is going to be done in the daytime. So let's say if it was like instrument lights, you wouldn't need instrument lights because the sun is up and it's daytime. And then you have circuit breakers for your radio. So every circuit breaker is kind of labeled, and it tells you what particular what that circuit breaker is associated with. So um, you just gently rub your fingers across and you're good there. So that part of the checklist is good. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, item number 6. So starting, and this indicates temperatures above freezing. It's a very simple checklist. Mixture rich, carburetor heat cold, prime is required, throttle half inch, eighth inch, propeller area clear, which you will open up the window and you would just yell out clear prop. In addition to that, your beacon light should be on. In case people are around you with hearing protection, they can kind of hear what's going on. All right, and then you will bring the ignition switch to start. Like your car, you turn it into the start detent, and then you just let it go after the engine runs over, and then you'll thrust your throttle and oil pressure. You would check at that point. All right, so give me a second here. Okay, so let's come on back to the simulator and let's come back to your side. Virtual cockpit. Okay. All right. So this is your master switch. This is your ignition. You can see the key there. Here's your carburetor heat. Your primer is right here. All right. We'll talk about that in a minute. Okay. Here's your parking brake. All right. So. All right. All right. So basically, with that parking brake, you will push the toe brakes down. If your heels are on the floor, your feet are only going to be on this part of the rudder pedals, but you brake with your toe brake. So you raise your foot, and together you press both of these at the same time. Your instructor has the ability to do the same thing as well, just in case things get a little bit out of hand. They can, you know, stop the aircraft too. So you would take your toe brakes, you would press the toe brakes, and then you would just pull that out. All right. And, all right. So the parking brakes are there. All right. So this is your mixture control. This can kill the fuel to the engine, or you can allow engine or fuel to go to the engine. As we get to higher altitudes, we would slowly just bring this back a little bit, and this would be calling leaning the mixture. So here the mixture is at 100%, if you can see that icon. But then, you know, as we get flying higher altitudes, the air gets thinner, so we use less fuel, so we can actually control our fuel consumption. So that is the mixture. This is the full rich position. This is the lean position, okay, where we're choking the engine out. And we do that when we stop flying for the day after we park. This is your throttle. This is your gas pedal right here. Okay, and you can see mixture up top, you can see throttle up top, so it's all labeled. Okay, when you get more and more familiarized with the aircraft, you'll know to just kind of look for things because everything's pretty much labeled. All right, so the mixture is rich, carburetor heat. This is on. If it's cold, we want it all the way in. So we want the carburetor heat in, so that is the cold position. So prime as required up to 3 strokes. So here's your primer. You will pull this out once and then push it in gently. Pull out twice and then push it back in gently. Pull out a third time and then push it back in gently. Basically what we're doing is we're introducing fuel to the engine. Okay, so we're kind of, you know, getting the juices flowing. And then the next item on the checklist is throttle. You want to have it 1/2 inch open. So you will kind of guesstimate what 1/2 inches, and you will just gently push that in a little bit, 1/2 of an inch. You would then go to your window, open that up, okay, and you would kind of lean your head out the window a little bit, and you would say clear prop. You would yell out very, very loud. So anybody working around or, looking around the aircraft, um, they will know, they will hear you say clear prop. Another thing that we do as a safety precaution, and let's go ahead and secure that window. Another thing we do as a safety precaution is we turn on the beacon. All right. Now, it's not on yet, but when we turn the master switch on, which is the alternator in our battery, um, then what's going to happen is that light will go out, and I'll show you that in a second. So after we say clear prop, if people didn't hear the clear prop, when we turn the master switch on, there is a visual indication that people, if they're wearing hearing protection, they could see this tail light. And I don't know if you can see it pulsating. There it is. Okay, so anybody working around the aircraft, and we would not be starting up on that runway. We're just here for simulator purposes. We will be starting out on the actual ramp, and I think I'm going to reposition this aircraft for future lessons. But just kind of wanted to go in and try not to make this video too long. But all right, next. So when the master switch comes on, which is that split switch that we saw, then the beacon starts illuminating and flashing. So, that's just as a safety. And then we will bring our ignition switch to start. Now there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 positions. This key could be in the off position. It could be in the right magneto position, left magneto position, or both position. Okay. So basically what's going to happen is we're going to be watching a couple things. When we turn the ignition on, we're going to be looking at the tachometer here. And we want this tachometer, after we get things going and the engine started, we want to adjust for 1,000 RPMs. So we're going to bring this and we're going to start this. Okay. And basically this is a little bit higher than 1,000 RPM. So we're going to just gently pull back in the throttle just a little bit. But we want it at about 1,000. So our propeller is spinning. Okay. So we adjust for 1,000 and we check our oil pressure. On really, really cold days, it may take a little bit for our oil pressure to come up. But after we start, we're looking and we're adjusting for 1,000, and this oil pressure should start coming up. All right, and let's see if we. Oh, I'm just revving the engine up, and you can see that the oil pressure rose. So the pressure built up in the cylinders. Okay. I'll advance the throttle again. You'll hear it, and you see the oil pressure rise. Okay, another indication you're going to see over time is your oil temperature is going to come up. But as far as your engine gauges, anything red is bad in aviation. Anything red is bad. So as long as you're in the green, that's a beautiful thing. But periodically as you fly, you don't, and this is a window. This is the low side. This is the high side. Okay, so this will come up. Don't worry about it. But you want this needle to be in the green range. Okay, especially when we're operating our aircraft. So that's it. And I think I mentioned fuel. So yeah, fuel's full. We got lots of fuel. Okay. So let's see here. Starting engine, mixture rich, carb heat cold. We primed, throttle, propeller area clear, ignition. All right. So we did all those checklist items. I'm not going to go into the before takeoff or what we would call a run up. I'm going to do that with the virtual reality goggles because it's too much to be sitting and playing with arrows and all that and everything. So that's basically something that you will have to become familiar with. during your flight training. And don't let this overwhelm you. This is very simple, and the more you do it, the easier it's going to become. So we're over 20 minutes, which I didn't want to go over 20 minutes, but we did. And I hope this video is helpful for you, Maria, and anybody else that is starting their flight training. So let's do a takeoff. And basically, another thing I wanted to touch on was basically French Valley is it's an uncontrolled field. So we would be self-reporting. All right, so before we got onto the runway, when we were there, we would have looked around, made sure nobody was on final approach, and you would just say French Valley traffic. And what's our tail number here? Our tail number is always going to be 2809 kilo. All right, so French Valley traffic, November 2809 kilo is departing runway 6, French Valley. So you announce who you're talking to, what you're doing, and you close with French Valley. So at the beginning of the end, even if somebody comes in the middle of the transmission, you know, but your instructor will be doing this, but this is what you should hear your instructor say. French Valley traffic, whatever the tail number of the aircraft is, departing runway 6, French Valley. They'll line up, okay? And just let's just stay on top of the checklist items. So a normal takeoff, carburetor heat cold, throttle full open. We'll raise the nose wheel at 50 knots, and we'll climb out at 65 to 70 knots. All right, so, and again, don't let this overwhelm you. You will do this so many times, you'll know it like the back of your hand. Brakes release. Airspeed alive. $40 knots. 50 knots, we're just going to pull back on the control yoke, rotation. We're going to let the wings aerodynamically take the weight off of the wheels. And you're going to see your instructor play with the trim wheel at this point. All right. See you guys next video. Have a great day.